time, and it all turns out fine. It's
In this song, Slow, I have some lead vocals with a bunch of background vocals behind them. However, some of my background doubles are not quite in sync with my lead vocals. Here's my lead vocal track, and then I have two background vocal or background doubles below it. Now that they're all three highlighted, I hit Control and then up arrow key, and I can expand those to see them better. Let's do one more. This way, I'm able to see where things do and don't line up. There's many opportunities here in how we can fix this. For one thing, we can notice that the breaths might be a little bit out of sync. For example, right here, see how this breath comes later than this one, and this one definitely comes earlier. You'll hear a cascade of breaths that way. So all three tracks highlighted, Shift S to solo them. Let's listen for these breaths right there.
come waste your time, and it.
I still want this to have a somewhat raw feeling, but I do definitely want it to have a produced feel as well. So I'll probably just end up deleting those breaths. We don't need to double up on those breaths. Each time that those breaths are playing together, they're increasing in volume. Let's go ahead and hear that now.
Come waste your time, and it.
Kind of makes it show that there's a clear definition between the lead vocal and the background vocals if we don't have all these breaths in the background vocals. Now that we've deleted that breath, let's come over here and see that these are not in sync with the lead. An interesting thing about human performance is sometimes if you do something too early, you're kind of pretty early for essentially the rest of the performance. So if I were to just click here, Shift, click down here, B to break it, and with my grabber tool, highlight both of these, I can move the whole thing so that these waveforms line up and just kind of naturally look how it's lined up pretty well right here as well. I can do batch fades later, but we'll just do these individually. Highlight them both, hit F to fade. Come on over here. Let's get rid of these breaths. So I've clicked here. There's a breakpoint on the left side. So if I hit A, it deletes everything to the left. We can, of course, fade those out. Let's hear that now.
Time, and it all turn.
Hey, that worked out quite nicely. Let's see what other opportunities we have. Here's an interesting one right here. Kind of the same situation. We'll break that and move it individually. For the sake of the video, I won't go through and delete all the breaths. Let's just find some more areas where we can edit these to be a little bit more in sync. This is a great opportunity right here where these ones are lining up mostly. See how this area or this ending portion is not lined up with that one? Let's go ahead and manually do that. So I'll put a break right there and I'm moving it. And I'll do a nice fade right there at the very end. Put a break here and move that just a little bit because I believe this is going to line up with this portion, not this portion. It should only be lining up with that. I've got that little gap there. We'll just do a bigger crossfade there and hope it works out. We'll hear if there's any issues. But this one's definitely going to give us trouble. So we'll put a break here, and move the whole thing. Clearly, that's not going to work. See how this is way out of time now. So I'll put a separation right there so I can move that on its own and then move that one on its own as well. And then I'll just do a nice fade again. We'll fade into we'll get rid of that first portion and do a nice fade in. Same with this. Crossfade right there. Now let's hear this in context, or let's go ahead and hear this edit.
A sweet retreat, yeah, it's sad.
One more time.
Sweet retreat, yeah, it's.
Yeah, you can't really hear the edits, but of course, if you were to delete the lead vocal where it's one cohesive performance, you'll hear these gaps.
A sweet retreat, yeah, it.
But it's in the background, and you especially can't hear in the context of the song.
A sweet retreat.
But it does sound a little bit more cohesive. Here's another opportunity right here. I'll hit B to separate the whole thing, move it over. That's pretty okay right there. A little fade in, or fade out, fade in. Let's do the same thing to this one. Crossfade. Since these aren't tuned yet, they're not sounding great, but the tightness of the performance is definitely getting better.
My sweet retreat, yeah, it's sad.
And that's what I'm after for these vocals, is I want it to thicken up the sound to make it almost as if the audience isn't hearing that I have two doubles behind the scenes. They're just hearing a lead vocal with a lot more energy behind it. Here's another opportunity to fix some vocals. Let's highlight both of these together. B to break, move it subtly. Nice little fade out, nice little fade in, and then a crossfade. Oh, we're getting rid of those anyway, so we should just delete them now. Ooh, these are definitely way out of sync. These breaths need to go before anything happens. Maybe I'll have these two end on time as well, giving it a nice fade to kind of match what's surrounding it.
It said, just rest your feet and bask in my sweet retreat. Yeah, it said, come waste your time.
Here's another opportunity right here. This one's a little bit all over the place. The great thing about this technique is that you can use visuals to help match it, and it works out pretty nicely.
Waste your time. And
so after I made that edit, just one more time, we don't really hear it.
come waste your time.
But it's definitely a lot cleaner. And if we solo those background vocals, it's a lot more choppy.
Come waste your time.
So I can spend a little bit more time doing some crossfades and maybe some fading out a little bit cleaner. But overall, we don't really hear it very much because it's in the background. I've recorded background vocals where the singer is just essentially mumbling and it sounds great because it's just so far into the background. But I'll go through the rest of these performances and adjust all of these subtly to make them line up a little bit more. And I'm doing this all manually. Of course, there's plugins for this, but they can be quite expensive. Looks like I got used to it at the very end and started being a little bit more in sync with the music, which is why it's also very important to take multiple takes of your vocals because you're warming up into it. Your previous takes are informing your next takes, so each one should get better and better. But then once you start finding that each new take you do kind of gets worse, you've reached a certain threshold. You need to take a break. You need to move on to something else. Mostly a break is going to help with that. Maybe putting a day or two in between recording vocals so you can have a different perspective. That always helps as well. Imagine doing this to all of your background vocals, though. It can be quite a task, but it's very worth it to make a lot of these things line up so that it's a produced, cohesive project where you don't have any sort of hiccup that's not quite helping make the song have a feeling of being produced or professional. We're just trying to avoid any situation where we're bringing the listener out of the listening experience and they're noticing small little details that bring them out of enjoying the song, like pops or clicks or a bunch of S sounds that are all lined up together when they shouldn't be there at all. In the song Summer Rose, I also have some interesting issues with sync between the lead vocals and the background vocals. I have quite a few background vocals on this track, and because of that, all of the little differences in performance are stacking up onto each other, giving it a nice big sound. But at the same time, it's also going to be highlighting differences between the track, perhaps in unpleasant ways. Check out at the very end these S sounds. So that we can have a better visual, I'm going to highlight all of these tracks, hit Control and the up arrow key. Now we can see them a little bit better. So you can tell this is the very end of the phrase. Let's go ahead and listen to this in context.
Stars in my hands were so weak, so dry and cold.
You can hear a bunch of S sounds coming in and out after they're done with their performance right here. Let's go ahead and hear what this sounds like in solo. So I'll highlight all these tracks again and hit Shift S.
So dry and cold.
Hear that at the very end? There's so many different S's all over the place. One here, 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 here. They're just kind of staggered. So I need to get rid of a bunch of these S sounds. You'll also notice that I'm out of sync with my background vocals here, but because I did such a big stack, I don't want them all to be perfect. It actually adds to it compared to just doing it to a couple tracks. You can see I'm also a little bit out of sync on some of these tracks where the starting point is later or earlier on the backgrounds, depending on the recording. And I could fix those, but since I recorded so many background vocals on this track, All these differences kind of add to it in a very pleasant way, except for, of course, these weird S sounds. So I'm not going to fix the timing of these vocals because it does add to the big sound. So let's go ahead and fix some of these. While there's a lot of ways to edit this down, here's just one way to do it. And you can, of course, use this technique or blend it with other techniques for other purposes. I'll click on my first track right here, and I'm going to hit semicolon to move down. It's a lot, you can see it a lot better if I have a selection. If I hit semicolon, it moves down by track. P goes up by track. Because these are all a little bit inconsistent, I can't do this. I can't highlight that area and then move it down and break, move it down and break, because I'm cutting off way too much. So my intention here is to click right there. I'm going to hit B to break, down, B, down, B, down, B, down, B. I can do it all like that, or I can also do it this way. I'll undo those moves, and I'll just click, hold Shift, so it includes these new moves in my selection, and then I'll hit the semicolon to go down, and then B to break them all at once. Now that they're broken, I can come over here, click where I want, and hit S to delete everything to the right of that clip. And of course, it's not moving on to delete the rest of these clips because I've broken them. We'll leave that one. I don't know what's going on there. Let's take a listen now.
My hands were so weak, so dry and cold.
I don't like that. So we will fade that out. Let's listen in context of the song, though.
The stars in my hands were so weak, so dry and cold.
So now the only S sound at the end of cold, or that sound, is only in my lead vocals in that vocal double. One more time.
So dry and cold, fumbling.
I can, of course, do batch fades. I can also do batch fades by highlighting with a selection like this, blank on the right, and I'm highlighting clips on the left. If I hit F, it'll do a fade out. It just knows that because I'm fading to blank space. But notice how that doesn't quite work for all of them. So I might just do batch fades where I highlight all of the clips and then hit Command F to get my batch fades. So then each of them are individually processed depending on the clip itself.